The United States, with its amazing natural beauty, its cultural traditions, its great food, and many wonderful people. It's been a major destination for tourists for many years. Not long ago, surging growth in the number of visitors was predicted to be the story for 2025. Well, its popularity seems to be taking something of a dip right now. Whether it's people upset because Trump's America has been attacking or insulting their country, or people who have been hearing about arbitrary detentions of visitors at immigration, a lot of people have been changing their plans. The research firm Tourism Economics had previously forecast that travel to the United States would grow by 9% this year. They've now revised that forecast with the projection plummeting by 14%, so from +9 down to -5. And they believe the fall to be constrained in the short term by a number that had made plans that are inconvenient to cancel. In other words, it'll get worse later. Inbound traffic spending in 2025 could fall by over 12%, amounting to a loss of $64 billion to the tourism sector overall. Their analysis puts forward three factors impacting the demand. One, travel sentiment. People who feel attacked by America or who are worried about it being a more hostile place to visit. Second, economic pressures. Economies facing recessions with 25% tariffs hitting their trade. That is another constraint. And thirdly, the tariff policies have been driving up the value of the US dollar, making travel to the US more expensive for international visitors. Much of the decline comes from a massive boycott by Canadian travellers, who remain furious at Trump's economic attacks on their country, with a view to making them accede to his wish for Canada to become the 51st state of America. Airline demand between Canada and the US has collapsed, down over 70%. This comes from the aviation analytics company OAG, which has published data on flight booking showing that from March 2024 to March 2025, the number of tickets per airline is down anywhere between 71.4 to 75.7%. So whereas 1.2 million tickets were booked last year, this year less than 300,000. And this is before the Trump administration brings in an expected new travel ban, which could restrict citizens from up to 43 countries from entering the United States. It's not just the countries most heavily attacked or targeted by tariffs either. Incidents at the US border have led to Britain, Germany and Canada updating their travel advisories for citizens wanting to travel to the US. These advisories now typically warn that even inadvertent and minor breaches of entry rules can result in people being detained or arrested at the border and held for an extended period of time. This advice has been prompted by a number of well-publicised incidents where tourists or other visitors were detained and or turned away. One such incident was the French scientist who was going to speak at a conference, who was denied entry due to the contents of his phone, which supposedly had comments critical of the Trump administration on there, although the US authorities gave an unspecific denial. There was also the Welsh backpacker, who was denied entry at the US-Canada border and held for 19 days in an immigration and customs enforcement centre. There she was put into leg chains, waist chains and handcuffs. Then there was Lemon Tyler and her German fiancé, who took a road trip into Mexico when he vacationed with her. On the way back in, border agents handcuffed Tyler and chained her to a bench, and sent Lucas Silaf into a detention centre for 16 days before being allowed to fly back to Germany. Silaf said it was never made clear why he was being detained, and he was held long after he'd offered to go home voluntarily. Then there was the Canadian citizen, who had some should have been trivial issues with a work visa and found herself detained in a freezing cement cell. She was told she should mentally prepare herself to be held in detention for months. In the event, it was just 2 weeks. Imagine that. Oh, you need to reapply for this visa at a consulate. Okay, I'll do that. Great. But now we're going to arrest you anyway and put you in a prison for weeks and maybe months without explanation. Pedro Rios, director of the American Friends Service Committee's US-Mexico border program, said in the 22 years he has worked on the border, he has never seen travellers from Western Europe and Canada treated like this. And he told the Associated Press this: "It's definitely unusual with these cases so close together, and the rationale for detaining these people doesn't make sense. It doesn't justify the abhorrent treatment and conditions they endured. The only reason I see is there is a much more fervent anti-immigrant atmosphere." All of these cases, of course, got high-profile media coverage back in their home countries, hence why a number of people who would have considered going to the US started to think twice. The New York Times spoke to some travellers who had been planning to visit and subsequently cancelled the trips, such as Christoph Bartel, a German citizen who'd planned to visit Arizona this summer, looking to go to some of the national parks. He said this: "It does not feel right to support the American economy when the president is causing so much sabotage. It is disappointing to abandon a special trip that we had planned for months, but we will go to Canada or to Mexico instead." After Canada and Mexico, Britain provides the largest number of visitors to the US, nearly 4 million last year. The slump may not be in the same zone as Canadians, for obvious reasons, I guess, 5% down rather than an expected increase, but the political climate and the rising costs are nevertheless making an impact. And all of this, as you might expect, is hurting some of the American businesses, particularly the small businesses in the US that serviced visitors. Luke Miller, the owner of Real New York Tours, said his business was being decimated after droves of mainly Canadian visitors cancelled trips. 20 busloads of seniors had pulled, costing him thousands of dollars. The Trump administration is, of course, entirely within its rights to choose on behalf of its country to insult and financially target countries formerly considered to be its closest allies, to call them pathetic, and to talk about how you want to annex them and make them part of your country, or indeed to insult journalists just because they come from a country that for some reason or another you've chosen to despise.
The Defense Secretary.
What country are you? Wait, what country are you from?
The UK.
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion.
The administration is also entirely within its rights to harass legitimate visitors at the borders, arrest and detain them before refusing them entry. The American people voted, and they got what they voted for, as people in the comments section below often remind us. This video is just one amongst many reminders that yes, you can do all of those things. Just remember that they have consequences. To embrace the behaviours should be to accept those consequences.